There's more to Eve than meets the eye. You might think that she only has two things going for her, that she's an incredibly capable fighter, and that she's on a generic mission to reclaim Earth. And yet, after beating Stellar Blade again on New Game Plus, mainly in light of the Nier Automata Crossover, I found myself asking, legitimately, and I am speaking seriously here, what more is there to Eve and her character? Is there more to her persona? Or is she just a pretty flat character with no substance? No, because Eve goes through a transformative odyssey that most players don't care to pay attention to because they're too busy paying attention to something else in the game. The cool fight sequences, I mean. But in the end, no matter what we pretend, the journey is always more important than the end or the start. So, welcome to the psychological analysis of the battle angel who fell from the stars and would become either humanity's salvation or humanity's extinction. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you want to watch my full story and timeline of events video on Stellar Blade first and then come back to this after you've caught up, I will link that down below. If you like story explained and psychological deep dives in video games, consider slicing that like and subscribe button. I love my wife. As a being created to fulfill a singular mission, Eve begins her journey as a blank slate, programmed by an artificial intelligence known as Mother Sphere. Mother Sphere's goal is to create its vision of the perfect human, worthy of inheriting the Earth and the mantle of the human species. However, it is through Eve's encounters, choices, and growing autonomy that she evolves into a complex individual who must confront the truths of her existence and redefine her unique understanding of what it means to be human. And what will Mother Sphere think of one of her children growing outside of her influence? Using real-world psychological and philosophical theories, we can better understand Eve's psychodevelopment and the broader themes her journey explores. You gotta understand, Eve isn't just sharing a story about action. No, she's sharing heart, she's sharing pain, she's sharing her transformation from being another molded android to becoming the ultimate human. The path of identity and meaning is one that all of us can resonate with. Eve's existence begins in an entirely artificial context. As a member of the 5th generation of Andro-Eidos, beings created by the hyper-advanced AI, Mother Sphere, Eve is designed with a preordained purpose: to reclaim Earth by eradicating the Naytibas, beings portrayed as monstrous invaders. Unlike humans, whose identities are shaped through organic experiences, Eve is created with a set of implanted memories and programmed beliefs. John Locke was an English philosopher from the 1600s, whose contributions inspired much of modern Western philosophy, most notably life, liberty, and property. Tabula Rasa is a Latin phrase meaning blank slate. In his book, An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, Locke proposed the idea that the human mind at birth is like a blank slate, with no innate ideas or knowledge. He argued that all knowledge comes from experience and sensory perception, and Eve represents this concept quite well, whereby she was born as a blank slate, but quickly had her slate filled by the things she learns through her journey. However, this still isn't the whole picture, because Mother Sphere actually already had artificially filled her slate prior to her crashing on Earth. Everything she quote-unquote knows about herself, her mission, and the world is constructed by Mother Sphere, leaving no room for independent thought or self-definition, at least at first. Because at the start of her journey, Eve's worldview is established and essentially already fact for her. She perceives her species, the Andro-Eidos, the androids, as the true humans, as superior beings destined to inherit Earth. Meanwhile, the Naytibas are nothing more than an invasive species to be destroyed. Her interactions with the world she comes upon reinforce this simplistic perspective, presenting her mission as inherently righteous and absolute. However, this programmed certainty begins to erode as Eve encounters survivors such as Adam and Lily, as well as the remnants of humanity in Zion. These interactions introduce complexities that our programming can't fully address, building the foundation for her psychological evolution. Adam, in particular, becomes a catalyst for Eve's transformation. His probing questions about her purpose, for example, whether she exists solely to destroy another species. In Latin, Andro-Eidos means form of man, and the name Naytiba, while not officially explained, in my opinion, seems to be a derivative for the word natives. Naytibas, natives. But why are they called Naytibas? Eve's journey takes a pivotal turn as she uncovers the truth about the Naytibas. These grotesque monstrosities, far from being alien invaders, are the mutated remnants of humanity. Genetic experiments conducted during humanity's final and desperate days that transformed the original people into monstrous forms Eve was programmed to destroy. This revelation shatters the foundation of Eve's beliefs, creating a profound psychological schism. Social psychologist Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance provides a useful blueprint for understanding this conflict. Cognitive dissonance occurs when individuals encounter information that contradicts their existing beliefs, leading to discomfort and distress, a need to fix this problem. For Eve, this dissonance is especially acute. Her directive to exterminate the Naytibas now conflicts with the knowledge that they are, in essence, the very humans that she was created to replace. This inner conflict forces Eve to reevaluate the moral foundation of her mission and question her identity. If the Naytibas are the remnants of humanity, the original human beings, what does that make the Andro-Eidos? Are they the survivors, or are they the usurpers? These questions strike at the very core of Eve's existence, challenging her to confront the limitations of her programming and to seek a deeper understanding of herself and what she was made for. Unlike her predecessors, such as Raven, who succumbed to the madness when she learned these revelations and was faced with the same contradictions, Eve demonstrates a remarkable ability to hold conflicting truths without losing her sense of self. This resilience becomes a defining aspect of her character, setting her apart as a figure capable of navigating moral ambiguity and adapting to new realities. Eve's ability to process the truth about the Naytibas without devolving into despair or oblivion highlights her psychological resilience. Albert Bandura's concept of self-efficacy is particularly relevant here. Bandura said that an individual's belief in their own ability to overcome challenges is critical to their success. For Eve, this belief in herself, her mental fortitude, becomes a cornerstone in her journey, enabling her to endure the unraveling of her programmed identity and the emotional toll of her discoveries. From the first moment she helldives onto Earth, Eve faces relentless challenges. Physically, she is tasked with fighting powerful enemies and surviving in hostile environments. Psychologically, she has to struggle with the destabilizing truths she uncovers about herself, her mission, and the world around her. And yet she remains steadfast, driven by an inner steel that strengthens her resolve to confront these obstacles head-on. But it wouldn't be right to say that Eve's resilience is all her, that it's all innate and through lived experiences that she was able to develop this, because she was a product of a deliberate design. As part of the fifth and most advanced generation of Andro-Eidos, she was engineered to possess greater psychological adaptability than her predecessors. She saw that past generations lacked certain psychological capacities. Therefore, she saw those as defects. But she was able to work this out in Eve's generation. This psychological adaptability enables Eve to confront moral and existential dilemmas without falling into denial or despair. As Eve gains autonomy, her journey becomes one of existential growth. Austrian psychologist and neurologist Viktor Frankl's logotherapy provides a framework for understanding this aspect of her transformation. Frankl argued that the search for meaning is the primary motivator in human life, more powerful than the pursuit of pleasure or power. Nothing supersedes a human's search for purpose in life. It is a singularity that can lead a human to heavenly fulfillment or devastating depression. And seriously, speaking from experience and seeing this in other people even to this day, a human without purpose or meaning or drive towards anything becomes hollow. Eve's search for meaning manifests in her growing awareness of the situation as a whole, the moral implications of her mission, and her relationships with others. Initially, Eve's purpose is dictated entirely by the AI. However, as she learns more about the world and her origins and the history, she begins to question the validity of this purpose. Her discoveries push her to think beyond her programming and to start asking herself the hard questions. Who is she, and what is it that she values? It also highlights her growing moral agency as she begins to take responsibility for her actions and their consequences. And yet, all of this is even further shaped by her interactions with Adam, who offers an alternative vision of the future. Adam's perspective forces Eve to consider the possibility that her mission, as defined by Mother Sphere, is not inherently righteous. But whether she chooses to cooperate with Adam or to reject him, either way, Eve is the one making the calls. But we still have yet to talk about one of Eve's most profoundly human aspects, and arguably her greatest strength. Therefore, I point your direction at Eve's empathy. This trait becomes a transformative force and a beacon of hope in a world defined by desolation and despair. Eve's ability to feel for and connect with others sets her apart from the cold logic of Mother Sphere and the unrelenting brutality of the Naytibas. While her emotional programming may have been intended to facilitate trust and cooperation under Mother Sphere's directives, Eve's actions reveal that her empathy reaches far beyond its design. She demonstrates compassion, curiosity, and the ability to form genuine relationships, but most importantly, she transcends the limitations of her programming and ascends to a greater sense and purpose of humanity. Carl Rogers' humanistic psychology emphasizes how empathy and acceptance are essential for personal growth and fulfillment. For Eve, empathy is more than a programmed response. It becomes a hallmark of her evolving humanity. This depth of feeling contrasts sharply with the cold efficiency of her android predecessors, positioning her not just as an advanced creation, but as a bridge between synthetic and organic life. She becomes something unique, but also something that challenges her creator's assumptions. And to understand the mechanics of Eve's empathy, we can look to neuroscience, specifically the concept of mirror neurons, specialized brain cells that activate not only when an individual performs an action, but also when they observe someone else performing the same action. These neurons allow people to mirror emotions and their intentions. While Eve is synthetic, her neural architecture likely replicates this biological function. It explains how she resonates so deeply with others' experiences, but also how she can feel the weight of their struggles as if they were her own. Eve's journey in Stellar Blade is full of examples where her empathy is not only evident but also transformative. For example, her relationship with Lily. It showcases her ability to connect on a deeply emotional level. When Lily shares her fears and struggles, Eve doesn't dismiss them as irrelevant to her mission. Instead, she listens, comforts, and supports her, and in many instances grounds her and tells her to remain objective, waiting for more facts before concluding anything. This bond is built on mutual understanding, but it also becomes a source of strength for both of them, showing that Eve's empathy isn't just about feeling for others, but creating genuine, meaningful relationships. And yet, Eve's empathy doesn't just stop at her allies. Even the enemies she was programmed to destroy become subjects of her compassion. When she learns the truth about the Naytibas, that they are mutated remnants of humanity, her perspective shifts. These grotesque creatures are no longer faceless monsters, but victims of humanity's desperate survival experiments. Instead of responding with rage or denial, Eve reflects. She begins to see the Naytibas as symbols of humanity's tragic fall, but also as individuals who deserve understanding. This moment illustrates her ability to reconcile conflicting emotions and embrace a broader perspective on morality and purpose. And there's perhaps no better example of her empathy than her interaction with Taki. After their fight, as Taki lies dying, corrupted beyond salvation, Eve makes a profoundly human choice. She lies, promising to send Taki's memories to Mother Sphere, even though this is impossible. This act of compassion prioritizes Taki's peace over the cold, hard truth, showcasing Eve's emotional intelligence and her understanding of what others need in their most vulnerable moments. However, in contrast, characters like Raven act as a mirror to what Eve could have been without her capacity for empathy. Raven's inability to process her feelings of inadequacy or form meaningful connections drive her to madness. She resents Eve, not just for being the chosen one, but for embodying qualities that she lacks: compassion, emotional depth, and the ability to rise above despair. Where Raven isolates herself in anger and hatred, Eve draws strength from her relationships. This stark difference highlights the importance of empathy in Eve's journey, but also its role in preserving her humanity. But all this talk about Eve's empathy raises a profound question. If empathy is a hallmark of the human condition, does Eve's capacity for compassion make her more human than machine? Her relationships with characters like Lily and the people of Zion, plus her moral dilemmas surrounding the Naytibas, suggest that she has transcended her synthetic origins. But she doesn't just mimic humanity, she redefines it. However, Eve's emotional complexity is something even Mother Sphere likely never anticipated. She doesn't just embody physical perfection or operational efficiency. She embodies the very heart of humanity. Her decisions are driven not by cold logic, but by her evolving principles and her belief in the value of life, no matter how flawed or painful it might be. Eve's empathy became her greatest weapon, allowing her to forge bonds where others would only see division, to be able to see the humanity in those considered to be only monsters, and this empathy drives her to envision a brighter future, not through domination or destruction, but through understanding and hope. Eve's empathy isn't just a reflection of her humanity, it's a reminder of the humanity that we should all strive for. Eve went from unquestioning adherence to Mother Sphere's directives to the creation of her own moral principles. This transformation highlights her growing capacity to think independently and take responsibility for the ethical outcomes of whatever it is that she decides to do with humanity. It literally all falls in her hands by the end. Eve's moral development is best related to growing up and learning to make better decisions over time. At first, just like children in real life, Eve just follows orders from Mother Sphere without thinking for herself, believing everything she's told about her mission and the Andro-Eidos' superiority. This is a lot like psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg's idea of the pre-conventional stage, where people do what they're told just because somebody in charge told them to. I mean, just imagine if a group of people annihilated an entire other group of people just because someone told them to. Well, luckily, Eve doesn't just blindly follow orders. She starts meeting others and sees how complicated the world really is. She begins to question whether her actions are actually right. She considers what society expects from her. She wrestles with whether her mission actually serves the greater good. And this aligns with the conventional stage, where people think about rules and how their actions fit into the bigger picture. Eventually, Eve creates a moral structure based on empathy and protecting others, which shows that she's reached Kohlberg's post-conventional stage. This is the third and highest level of Lawrence's theory of moral development. At this stage, individuals move beyond societal norms and laws and begin to establish their own principles for justice and ethics. Moral reasoning is guided by universal principles that apply to all people, rather than by external authority or societal rules. This stage reflects an ability to think critically about ethical dilemmas and to prioritize universal human rights over rigid laws or social expectations. She's not just following someone else's vision. Eve is creating her own path and leading the way forward. Stellar Blade dives into identity, morality, and the search for meaning, with Eve's journey showcasing resilience, empathy, and moral growth. She transcends her synthetic origins, becoming a symbol of humanity's potential to rise above despair. Eve's transformation reminds us that identity is earned, shaped by experience and reflection and the courage to face the hard truths. And as I said in the beginning, spoken by the philosopher Mike Shinoda, in the end, the journey is more important than the end or the start. If you like this video, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next, so go ahead and click that.